And I recognize that they're going to be opposed to it. The requirements of the National Historic Preservation Act are that the State Historic Preservation Officer, the Advisory Council for Historic Preservation sign, which they have, and that Forest Service and the proponents sign. So Army Corps of Engineers is also required signatory. All those people have signed. Tribes are not required. It would be good for them to sign if they could, but I understand their opposition and understand that they don't have a desire to want to sign.
It sounds like basically the Forest Service's role in this is monitor and mitigation. In the end, that's basically what you can do. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, it's probably a partial assessment of what we can do under the laws. Again, I keep stressing the fact that we have laws that we have to abide by. So I can't unilaterally do something that doesn't fit within the laws that I have. I can require mitigation and I can require monitoring. And that, under the mineral laws of the United States, that is a good portion of what we can require. You're right.
Yes, we're a multiple use agency.
Yes. Well, I mean, what Mindy's saying is that the Forest Service is different than the Park Service or different than other agencies that have different missions. And so our mission has multiple facets to it, including grazing, harvesting of timber, mineral extraction, and so, and recreation and all the other resources. And so it's difficult sometimes for the public to understand those different missions and understand why we can't prohibit something versus having wilderness protection. How can an agency have all those different missions? And Congress has given us that mission, and that's part of the complexity and challenge and I guess interesting facet of how we manage national forests.
Jim, it's pretty clear in reading the discussions with the Corps and also talking with you that the whole issue of mitigation from the Clean Water Act and impacts to the waters of the U.S. and Davidson Canyon and Senior, that hasn't been resolved by a long shot. Rosemont just sent a letter in to the Corps challenging EPA's 7th letter. And you've mentioned this as a factor in the past, mitigation needs to be worked out. How do you legally approve this project with that fairly central issue unresolved?
As I said, I can't legally approve the document on the mine plan of operations until we get a certification from the state on the Arizona outstanding waters. The Army Corps can't approve their permit until they resolve their mitigation that they need to. So again, I am not the arbitrator of all agencies, and I can't speak for all agencies as to what they will or will not do. All I can say is that for the National Forest, I have the obligation to do certain things, and we are working towards doing that. But other agencies have different, again, missions and different requirements that they will have to follow through before this plan can be can proceed. Again, mine plan of operations can be approved, but they cannot operate until they meet the requirements of the agencies that are regulating what they do.
So by the way, the mine plan of operations, if I understand correctly, you said after you've made the final record of decision, if the record of decision is to approve, then you have to also separately afterward approve the mine plan of operations. So
That's correct.
how long is that going to take?
There is no time frame that's regulated or required. It's obviously the Rosemont Copper, I would assume, has the desire to get that approved as quickly as possible. So as soon as a record of decision is signed, I would assume they'll start trying to incorporate that into their mine plan of operations. And then we would have to review and determine if they have incorporated what they need to do. There's also the bonding requirements that have to be completed before we would go forward, and that bonding is being determined at this point, and it will be a large bond.
So
That's
does,
to ensure that they comply with all the things, you know, if Rosemont decided to go do something else besides mine and left us with all these issues, then we would have to either come clean up and make sure that everything's brought back to where it was, and that's part of the bonding requirements.
Can you be more specific about a large bond, can you give us a number?
The hundreds of thousands and millions.
Well, we're talking to the millions, and I can't give you the exact number yet, because it hasn't been totally calculated. And it depends on the time of year. I mean, when you first start, you have you're only taking out a portion of the effects. As you go into a time period where you have more impact on the land, your bonds are gonna go up, and as you reclaim, it's gonna go down. So it's a moving number.
to sign the mine plan of operations, you'll need the Army Corps to sign off on the 404?
That's not a requirement.
Okay.
But to operate, is that correct? To operate, they would need to have all the required permits in place. But to approve the mine plan of operations, I just need the 401.
From the state?
Again, these are things that I don't just make up. These are part of the law.
Don't care. Back for a minute.
Is this a good one you're saving on?
No, it's not. I think what we're all dealing with here is we're dealing with something that's really, really complex and difficult, and I'm straining to find words to ask the question that's on my mind. No, I don't say those things to the end.
Okay. It is a very complex.
Back to the, I just want to go back a second to the tailings and the seepage and so forth. Do you have any mitigation planned in advance for the tailings and seepage, or are you going to have to just wait and adapt in case there is problems?
Well, there's lots of monitoring, as we said. We've got, our indications are with the dry stack tailings and the amount of reclamation and that work that should reduce to the point where there isn't a problem. I don't know, is there any specific that you can give me, Chris?
Yes. There are requirements for testing tailings and waste rock under the Aquifer Protection Permit that DEQ issues. The forest put on top of that additional characterization during operations, and it'll be things such as the process water that goes into the tailings or that is with the tailings, so the forest can understand all the different components that are going into the tailings pile or the waste rock pile, and therefore better predict what could happen as we get closer to closure.
Just Game and Fish, when they did their modeling, or they quoted some modeling, they showed these levels again of the sulfates and the dissolved solids exceeding not legal standards, but aesthetic taste standards. And are you saying that those numbers when they were wrong, or their calculations were wrong, or that you think that even if they say that, you can prevent it with additional by watching it carefully? I guess I just want to
I'm not
make
sure.
sure.
Are they talking about this? Are they talking about the stormwater, or are they talking about the seepage?
I think much of the seepage.
Seepage.
So the seepage part, again, what Chris is saying is that we are committed, as far as the mitigation, to make sure that they comply with this sampling, to make sure that they don't do that. But it's the mitigation, as far as I understand, there's some things that have never been required of companies before. And this is one that was a negotiation with the company to get to this point. And so it is pretty strict monitoring that each of their packets of material that they are either blasting or hauling has to be sampled, and they have to be mitigated. So whether or not it's the answer that everybody wants, all I can say is the one that we've come up with is the best way to try to address that particular issue. Am I missing something here?
Well, the seepage, it has to do with the context. If the seepage is reaching groundwater, we have to comply with Arizona Aquifer Water Quality Standards.
Right.
And we do, and the modeling shows that we do. I think the secondary standards Dean Fish was referring to, or EPA standards, aren't necessarily applicable to the seepage.
Well, if you want to ask that question, then I can give you something.
If I need more, I'll certainly send you the.
Yeah. So let me talk a little bit about the printing issue that you all can help me with. And that is, this is the document. This isn't a bunch of them, this is all of it. So printing is a very expensive proposition. And it takes a lot of paper. And so for everybody that would want a hard copy, we are providing DVDs, which is the latest technology of trying to figure out how to get the information to anybody that wants to understand and read this. The printed copies are available at ranger stations, at libraries, at other locations. In institutions or groups that want a printed copy, we would encourage them to share, to try to get the printed copies to go as far as we can. We're not trying to hide anything or trying to limit distribution. We're just trying to save on paper, basically. And so where somebody absolutely needs to have a printed copy, we'll try to meet that need. But we really want to encourage people to be looking at reducing the cost of mailing and printing this thing by taking a DVD, or you can go online and they're available there. I understand it's hard for some people to read computer screens, and that's difficult, and that doesn't go unnoticed. And so where we can and where we can try to get printed copies out to people, we'll do that, but I'm just asking for help.
So, back to that question, who is going to be able to get printed copies? Like if say San Luis wants one, they said they told me they can't get one, but what about some who doesn't? I'm still not clear on that.
I personally have not provided a printed copy. They are limited right now. We can only print so many at a time. And so if somebody wants a printed copy, we're going to try our best to get them. But again, if we can get people to take DVDs, that would be certainly a much better, more environmentally friendly way to go.
Who's paying for the copies? Isn't Rosemont paying for them? It's part of the EIS process.
Yes.
What are the three key things that you're looking at that could end up at CEQ?
Well, again, it's the main thing is the mitigation. It's what are we going to be looking at as far as mitigation effects on water quality, water quantity. Those are the main things. So if you're looking at three things, it's primarily water.
So the outlines that the EPA expressed,
Air.
but the outlines that EPA expressed in their letter in November would be along those lines, what you're talking about?
Well, again, even as BLM suggested, we've had many conversations with EPA, with the other agencies, and so letters that you read that are a month or two old have been addressed much more than what those original letters are. So we're in a different space now, or a different place with the concerns and issues with the other agencies, but it doesn't mean that we still don't want to have some further discussions, so that's what we'll do.
Well, the EPA letter said they haven't submitted anything on mitigation that even meets the minimum standards in November. Have they submitted something that meets standards at this point on mitigation?
Well, I think I don't know which letter you're exactly referring to, but I mean, they may be
November
related
7th.
to the Army Corps of Engineers.
Yes.
Mitigation. And
That's
so,
what I'm referring
again, I can't speak for them, and that is a continuing conversation they're having with them. But, as far as my discretion or my decision space.